Hey there, folks. Buckle up for a wild ride through the suburbs with my latest tale, The Battle for Backyard Bliss. This story's got it all: a nosy neighbor from hell, a backyard barbecue gone rogue, and a fight for justice that'll leave you cheering. It's a saga about one homeowner's stand against a self-appointed neighborhood tyrant who thinks she owns the whole damn block. Picture petty power plays, sneaky schemes, and a finale that'll make you want to throw your own victory party. Let's dive into the chaos. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon when the smell of charcoal and grilled meat yanked me out of a dead sleep. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Maybe my brain was stuck on last summer's cookouts, but then came the voices. Loud, obnoxious, and definitely not coming from my house. Laughter, clinking glasses, and some god-awful country tune blaring through a speaker. My bedroom window faced the backyard, and as I stumbled out of bed, rubbing sleep from my eyes, I yanked the curtains open. My jaw hit the floor. There, in my backyard, was a full-on barbecue. Strangers sprawled on my lawn chairs, kids running wild with water guns, and a folding table groaning under a spread of burgers, hot dogs, and potato salad. A portable grill was parked right next to my patio, puffing smoke like it owned the place. And at the center of it all, holding court with a margarita in one hand and a spatula in the other, was Linda, our neighborhood's self-proclaimed dictator. I'd known Linda was trouble since the day I moved into this quiet little cul-de-sac 6 months ago. She'd introduced herself with a fake smile and a passive-aggressive welcome packet stuffed with HOA rules, half of which she'd clearly made up. She'd once slipped a note under my door because my mailbox was too shiny and disrupted the street's aesthetic. Another time, she'd cornered me at the grocery store to lecture me about my recycling bin being 1 inch too close to the curb. Linda wasn't just nosy. She was a control freak who acted like she'd been crowned queen of the HOA. Everyone else was just a peasant in her kingdom. I'd kept my distance, nodding politely while plotting ways to avoid her. But this was war. I threw on a t-shirt and stormed outside, dodging a kid who nearly nailed me with a water balloon. The air was thick with the smell of charred burgers and sunscreen. A guy in a Hawaiian shirt flipped a hot dog and gave me a cheerful wave, like I was just another guest at this circus. I weaved through the chaos, about 24 people, none of whom I recognized, until I reached Linda. She was perched on my patio furniture, her over-bleached hair piled high, sunglasses perched on her nose like she was auditioning for a reality show. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, my voice cutting through the music. Linda barely glanced at me, taking a slow sip of her drink. "Oh, calm down, sweetie," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "It's just a little neighborhood barbecue. You know, community spirit and all that." Neighborhood barbecue? I gestured at the madness around us. "This is my backyard. You're trespassing." She waved a dismissive hand, her bangles jangling. "Don't be so dramatic. Your yard was just sitting here and used. The HOA encourages sharing underutilized spaces for community events." I blinked, dumbfounded. "That's not a thing, Linda. You can't just barge into my property and throw a party." She finally turned to face me, her lips curling into a smirk. "Honey, I'm the HOA president. I make the rules. Besides, look at everyone having fun. You should be thanking me for bringing the neighborhood together." I glanced around. A woman was wiping ketchup off her kid's face while another guy cracked open a beer, toasting me like I was in on the joke. A group of teenagers were tossing a football dangerously close to my rose bushes. None of them seemed fazed by the fact that they were on my property. My blood pressure spiked. "You have 10 minutes to clear out," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Or I'm calling the cops." Linda laughed, a high, grating cackle. "Oh, please. The police love me. I organize their charity golf tournament every year. They're not going to care about your little tantrum." She leaned back, crossing her legs. "Go ahead, try it. But good luck getting rid of us." I stood there, fists clenched, as she turned back to her conversation like I was invisible. The audacity of this woman was unreal. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, some curious, some amused, but none apologetic. I was the odd man out in my own damn backyard. Storming back inside, I slammed the door, my mind racing. Calling the cops might not work. Linda wasn't bluffing about her connections. Confronting her again would just give her the drama she craved. No, I had to be smarter. I had to hit her where it hurt. As I paced my kitchen, an idea started to form. It was petty, Sure, but it was perfect. I grabbed my phone and started searching. By the time I found what I needed, a grin was spreading across my face. Linda wanted a war? She was about to get one. Back in my kitchen, I was a man possessed. My phone screen glowed as I scrolled through search results, hunting for the perfect weapon. Linda thought she could waltz into my backyard and claim it like some suburban conquistador? Not on my watch. I needed something that would disrupt her little power trip without giving her the satisfaction of a public showdown. That's when I stumbled across it, a novelty stink bomb kit. Not your average kid's prank. These were industrial grade, designed for outdoor use, guaranteed to clear a crowd with a smell like rotting eggs and regret. The reviews were glowing. Ruin my neighbor's loud party in seconds and smell so bad, you'll question your life choices. Perfect. I placed an express order, paid extra for same-day delivery, and leaned back in my chair, already picturing the chaos. Linda's barbecue was about to get a memorable finale. For the next few hours, I played the part of the gracious, if begrudging, host. I stayed inside, peeking through the blinds as Linda's party raged on. She was in her element, flitting between groups, laughing too loudly, and barking orders at kids to stop running near the grill. Every so often, she'd glance at my house, probably expecting me to come out and make a scene. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Patience was my ally now. Around noon, the delivery truck rolled up, and I practically sprinted to the door to grab the discreet brown package. Inside were 6 small vials, each labeled extreme odor. Use with caution. I read the instructions twice, grinning like a kid on Christmas. All I had to do was crack the vials open and toss them into the yard. The smell would spread fast, linger for hours, and, best of all, be completely harmless. No laws broken, just pure, stinking justice. I waited until the party hit its peak. The music was louder, the crowd rowdier, and Linda was holding court by the grill, flipping burgers like she was on a cooking show. Slipping out my back door, I stayed low, creeping along the side of the house. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the sheer thrill of what I was about to do. I cracked open 3 vials and lobbed them over the fence, aiming for the far corner of the yard near the folding tables. The 4th went near the grill, and the last 2 landed by the lawn chairs. I ducked back inside, locking the door, and ran to the window to watch the show. It took about 30 seconds. At first, no one noticed. Then a woman near the tables wrinkled her nose, looking around like she'd stepped in something. A guy by the grill coughed, waving a hand in front of his face. The smell hit Linda next. She froze mid-sentence, her margarita glass tilting in her hand. "What is that?" someone yelled. The stench spread like wildfire, a foul mix of sulfur and despair. People started gagging, covering their noses with shirts and napkins. Kids dropped their water guns and bolted, screaming about poop air. The guy in the Hawaiian shirt abandoned his hot dog and sprinted for the gate. Pure pandemonium. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing out loud. Linda, to her credit, tried to hold her ground. "Everyone, calm down," she shouted, but her voice was muffled by the napkin she'd pressed to her face. "It's probably just a sewer issue." No one was buying it. Guests were already grabbing their stuff, tripping over chairs in their haste to escape. A woman knocked over a tray of coleslaw, cursing as it splattered her sandals. The teenagers fled, leaving their football in my rose bushes. Within 5 minutes, my backyard was a ghost town, littered with half-eaten burgers, crumpled napkins, and the lingering ghost of the stink bomb. Linda stood alone by the grill, her sunglasses crooked, her face a mask of fury. She scanned the yard, clearly looking for someone to blame. Her eyes locked on my window, and I gave her a little wave. Checkmate. I expected her to storm over and pound on my door, but she didn't. Instead, she grabbed her purse, muttered something under her breath, and marched out through the gate, leaving the mess behind. I waited until I was sure she was gone before stepping outside. The smell was still brutal. I had to hold my breath while I tossed the leftover food into a trash bag and stacked the folding tables against the fence. The grill was still warm, a sad reminder of Linda's failed takeover. As I cleaned up, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just round 1. Linda wasn't the type to slink away quietly. She'd be back, and I needed to be ready. Sure enough, the next morning, I woke to a bright yellow notice taped to my front door. HOA violation. It screamed in bold letters. The accusations were absurd. Unauthorized use of hazardous materials, disturbing the peace, and my favorite, failure to maintain a neighborly atmosphere. A fine of $300 was due within 48 hours, or further action would be taken. I laughed out loud. Linda was playing dirty, but she'd underestimated me. I ripped the notice off the door and headed inside to fire off an email to the HOA board. Dear board, I wrote, please provide documentation proving that my private backyard is subject to HOA event regulations. Additionally, I have video footage from my security cameras showing multiple individuals, including Linda, trespassing on my property without permission. I assume this fine is a mistake and expect its immediate retraction. I attached a few choice screenshots of Linda flipping burgers in my yard and hit send. By noon, I had a response, not from the board, but from Linda herself. Her email was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive nonsense. As HOA president, I'm disappointed in your hostile behavior. The barbecue was a community-building event, and your actions have caused unnecessary division. I urge you to reconsider your stance and work with us to maintain neighborhood harmony. I could practically hear her smug tone through the screen. She'd ignored my evidence, dodged my questions, and doubled down on her fake authority. Classic Linda. I wasn't surprised, but I was annoyed. If she wanted to escalate, I'd meet her head-on. That afternoon, I spotted her across the street, clipboard in hand, knocking on doors. She was rallying her troops, no doubt spinning a tale about how I'd sabotaged her community event with my toxic behavior. I watched from my porch as she worked her charm on Mrs. Henderson, the sweet old lady who baked cookies for everyone. Mrs. Henderson nodded politely, but I caught her rolling her eyes when Linda turned away. Good. Not everyone was drinking the Linda Kool-Aid. Still, I knew she'd find some allies, people too scared or too lazy to push back. I needed to act fast. I spent the rest of the day digging into the HOA bylaws, a mind-numbing PDF I'd barely skimmed when I moved in. Most of it was standard. No neon paint on houses, keep your lawn mowed, blah blah blah. But buried in the fine print was a gold mine. Only homeowners could serve on the HOA board. Renters, even long-term ones, were explicitly excluded. My mind raced. Linda's house had a weird vibe. Her mailbox said the Thompsons, but I'd never seen anyone else there. Was she renting? I pulled up the county property records online, and bingo, the house was owned by a guy named Michael Thompson, who lived 3 states away. Linda was a tenant. She had no legal right to be HOA president. This changed everything. I printed out the records, highlighted the relevant bylaw, and started planning my next move. Linda wasn't just a nuisance, she was a fraud. But exposing her would take more than an email. I needed allies, evidence, and a stage to make it stick. The next HOA meeting was in 2 weeks, and I was going to be ready. For now, I'd let her think she was winning. Let her knock on doors, write her fake fines, and strut around like she owned the place. Her throne was about to crumble, and I'd be the one holding the sledgehammer. The next few days were a masterclass in petty warfare. Linda didn't waste time ramping up her campaign against me. By Tuesday, my mailbox was stuffed with 3 more HOA violation notices, each more ridiculous than the last. One claimed my patio furniture was visually disruptive because it wasn't a neutral color. Another accused me of excessive noise from the stink bomb incident, which was laughable considering her blaring country music had rattled my windows. The third was a vague warning about unapproved modifications to landscaping, probably because one of her guests had trampled my rose bushes. Each notice demanded a $200 fine, bringing my total to a cool $900. I tossed them into a growing pile on my kitchen counter, mentally tallying my ammunition for the HOA meeting. Linda wasn't just relying on paperwork. She'd upgraded to psychological warfare. Wednesday morning, I caught her standing on the sidewalk, pointing at my house while chatting with a guy in a polo shirt who looked like he'd just stepped out of a golf cart ad. He was nodding, scribbling notes on a clipboard. I recognized him. Gary, one of her loyal HOA minions. Later that day, Gary left a voicemail. Hey, we've had complaints about your property's curb appeal. Could you trim your hedges by Friday? It's for the neighborhood's image. My hedges were pristine. This was Linda flexing her influence, trying to wear me down with busy work. I ignored the message but took a dozen photos of my yard, time-stamped, just in case. By Thursday, the neighborhood was buzzing. Linda had been working overtime, spreading her version of the barbecue story. According to my next-door neighbor, Tom, she was telling everyone I'd attacked her community event with dangerous chemicals, and was hostile to neighborhood unity. Tom, a retired mechanic who'd had his own run-ins with Linda, thought it was hilarious. "She told me you're a menace," he said, chuckling over his coffee. "Said you're trying to tear the HOA apart." I told her maybe the HOA could use a little tearing. Tom was on my side, but not everyone was. I overheard two women at the mailbox whispering about that guy who ruined the barbecue. Linda was painting me as the villain, and some people were buying it. I wasn't about to let her control the narrative. I started my own quiet campaign, knocking on doors of neighbors I knew had beef with Linda. First stop was Sarah, a single mom who lived 3 houses down. Linda had once fined her for leaving a tricycle in her driveway overnight, claiming it was a safety hazard. Sarah was still bitter. "She acts like she owns my house," she fumed, inviting me in for iced tea. I'd love to see her taken down a peg. I showed her the property records and the bylaw about renters. Her eyes lit up. "Oh, this is good. Count me in." Next was Mr. Patel, an older guy who'd been hassled by Linda for planting non-approved flowers in his front yard. He didn't say much, but his curt nod and "I'll be at the meeting" told me he was on board. Building my coalition felt good, but it wasn't enough. I needed more dirt on Linda. I spent hours combing through old HOA emails, looking for patterns. Sure enough, Linda's name was all over every petty fine and rule change. She'd pushed for bans on excessive holiday lights, mandatory mailbox colors, even a rule requiring approval for dog breeds over 20 pounds. Most of these rules weren't in the original bylaws. They'd been added during her reign. I cross-referenced dates and found a trend. Every time someone challenged her, they'd get slapped with a fine or a compliance check. She was running a protection racket disguised as an HOA. Friday brought a new surprise. I got a call from the city's code enforcement office. A bored-sounding woman informed me they'd received a complaint about possible health code violations in my backyard tied to the chemical incident at the barbecue. My heart sank for a split second. Linda was playing hardball. But then the woman added, "We'll need to schedule an inspection, but honestly, this sounds like a neighbor dispute. Pool dye and stink bombs aren't exactly biohazards." I laughed, relieved, and agreed to the inspection. If Linda thought she could scare me with city officials, she was in for a rude awakening. The inspection was set for Monday, but I wasn't waiting around. I spent the weekend preparing for the HOA meeting like I was going to trial. I printed extra copies of the property records, highlighted the renter bylaw in neon yellow, and drafted a speech that laid out Linda's abuses without sounding like a rant. I also reached out to a lawyer friend, Jen, who offered to review my evidence. "You've got a slam dunk case," she said over Zoom, flipping through my files. "If the HOA doesn't remove her, you could sue for harassment. Those fines are baseless, and her trespassing is a clear violation." Jen's confidence boosted mine. I wasn't just fighting for my backyard. I was fighting for everyone Linda had bullied. As the meeting loomed, I couldn't shake a nagging worry. Linda was slippery. She'd built her little empire by charming some and intimidating others. Even with my evidence, she'd try to spin the narrative, rally her loyalists, or pull some last-minute trick. I lay awake Sunday night, running scenarios in my head. What if she bribed the board? What if she faked some document proving she was a homeowner? What if she turned the meeting into a circus and derailed my plan? By dawn, I was wired on coffee and determination. Linda might be a queen, but every queen can fall. And I was ready to push. Monday morning, the city inspector showed up right on time, a middle-aged guy named Carl with a clipboard and a no-nonsense vibe. I led him to the backyard, half expecting him to roll his eyes at the absurdity of the complaint. He didn't disappoint. After a quick walk around, sniffing the air and checking the grill area, he shook his head. "This is clean as a whistle," he said, scribbling on his form. "No chemical residue, no health code issues." Whoever called this in was either confused or trying to stir up trouble. I smirked, picturing Linda's smug face when she got the report. "Probably both," I said. Carl chuckled, handed me a copy of his findings, and left with a wave. 1 point for me. The clean inspection was a win, but it didn't slow Linda down. By lunchtime, I had another HOA notice, this one accusing me of interfering with community events and demanding a written apology to be posted on the neighborhood's online forum. The fine was now up to $1,200, and the notice included a veiled threat. Failure to comply may result in legal action from the HOA board. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Legal action? From a renter pretending to be president? Linda was grasping at straws, but her desperation made her dangerous. I added the notice to my pile and sent a quick text to Jen, my lawyer friend, attaching a photo. Her reply was immediate. She's digging her own grave. Keep everything. That afternoon, I decided to take the fight to Linda's turf. The neighborhood had a community bulletin board near the entrance, where people posted lost pet flyers and garage sale ads. Linda used it as her personal propaganda machine, pinning up reminders about HOA rules and her community initiatives. Sure enough, there was a new flyer, printed on bright pink paper. Let's keep our neighborhood united. Report uncooperative residents to the HOA board. It didn't name me, but the subtext was clear. I snapped a photo, then pinned up my own flyer right next to it. Mine was simple. Know your rights. HOA bylaws prohibit renters from serving on the board. Check the facts at the next meeting. I didn't sign it plausible deniability, but I knew Linda would lose her mind when she saw it. She did. Tuesday morning, I was sipping coffee on my porch when Linda marched down the street, her heels clicking like gunfire. She ripped my flyer off the board, tore it into pieces, and stuffed the scraps into her purse. Then she spotted me watching and froze, her face twisting into a scowl. "You think you're clever?" she called, stomping toward my house. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my tone light. "Just sharing information, Linda. Transparency's important, right?" She stopped at the edge of my lawn, hands on her hips. "You're making a big mistake. The HOA is bigger than you, and we don't tolerate troublemakers." I raised an eyebrow. "Last I checked, you're not even a homeowner. Kind of hard to be the HOA when you're just renting." Her eyes narrowed, and for a split second, I saw panic flicker across her face. She recovered quickly, tossing her hair. "You don't know what you're talking about. Keep this up, and you'll regret it." She turned on her heel and stormed off, but her threat didn't land. If anything, it confirmed I'd hit a nerve. Linda was rattled, and rattled people make mistakes. The rest of the week was a blur of small skirmishes. Linda's allies, mostly older couples and a few suck-ups who liked her neighborhood pride shtick, started giving me the cold shoulder. One guy, a retired banker named Ron, crossed the street to avoid me while walking his dog. Another neighbor, a woman who'd once borrowed my hedge trimmer, left a passive-aggressive note in my mailbox. "Please respect our community's values." I tossed it with the others, but the isolation stung. Linda was turning the neighborhood into a battlefield, and I was public enemy number one. To counter her, I doubled down on my charm offensive. I baked a batch of brownies and dropped them off at Mrs. Henderson's house, casually mentioning the HOA meeting and Linda's renter status. She gasped, clutching her pearls. "That woman's been bossing us around for years. If she's not even a homeowner, I'm done with her." I left with a promise that she'd spread the word. Next, I helped Tom fix his garage door, using the time to fill him in on my plan. "You're like a suburban Robin Hood," he said, grinning. "Just don't get caught." By Friday, I had a solid crew. Sarah, Mr. Patel, Mrs. Henderson, Tom, and a few others who'd been burned by Linda's rules. We weren't just a team, we were a rebellion. Saturday brought a new wrinkle. I got an email from the HOA board, signed by Linda and Gary, announcing an emergency meeting on Monday, 2 days before the scheduled one. The agenda? Addressing disruptive behavior and proposed bylaw amendments. My stomach twisted. Linda was trying to ambush me, probably planning to push through some rule that would legitimize her power grab or slap me with more fines. I forwarded the email to Jen, who called me within minutes. "This is a power play," she said. "They're rushing it to catch you off guard. You need to show up with everything: records, bylaws, witnesses. And don't let her control the room." I spent the rest of the day refining my speech and rallying my allies. The emergency meeting was Linda's move, but I was ready to flip the board. Monday's emergency HOA meeting was held in the community center, a bland room with fluorescent lights and folding chairs that squeaked with every move. I arrived early, my backpack stuffed with printouts, a USB drive with security footage, and a note card with my speech. My allies were already there. Sarah, clutching a coffee mug like it was a lifeline, Mr. Patel, stone-faced but ready, and Mrs. Henderson, who'd brought a plate of cookies for morale. Tom slipped in late, giving me a thumbs up. The room filled up fast, about 30 neighbors, more than usual. Some were Linda's loyalists, whispering and shooting me dirty looks. Others were just curious, drawn by the drama. The air crackled with tension, like we were about to watch a cage match. Linda strode in at exactly 7 p.m., dressed in a power suit and heels, her clipboard clutched like a scepter. Gary trailed behind, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. She took her place at the front, banging a gavel she'd probably bought just for this. "Let's get started," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "Tonight, we're addressing a serious issue. One resident's attempts to undermine our community's harmony." Her eyes flicked to me, and a few people turned to stare. I kept my face neutral, my hands folded in my lap. Let her dig her hole. She launched into a speech that was equal parts Oscar-worthy and infuriating. She painted herself as a selfless leader, working tirelessly to foster unity through events like the barbecue. But one individual, she said, pausing for effect, chose to disrupt that unity with dangerous and hostile actions. She recounted the stink bomb incident, conveniently leaving out that it was my backyard. A few of her allies gasped on cue. "This behavior cannot stand," she concluded. "I propose a new bylaw. Any resident who disrupts a community event will face a $500 fine and mandatory mediation." The room murmured. I caught Sarah rolling her eyes. Linda opened the floor for comments, clearly expecting her cronies to back her up. Ron, the banker, stood first, droning on about respecting authority. Another loyalist, a woman with a perm straight out of the 80s, called me unneighborly. I waited, letting them exhaust their talking points. Then I raised my hand. Linda's smile tightened, but she couldn't ignore me. "Go ahead," she said, her tone clipped. I stood, holding my stack of papers like a shield. "I'd like to address the barbecue," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Specifically, the fact that it was held on my private property without my permission." The room went quiet. I passed around copies of my security footage screenshots, showing Linda and her guests in my yard. This wasn't a community event. It was trespassing, plain and simple. A few neighbors leaned forward, intrigued. Linda's face reddened, but she didn't interrupt, yet. I kept going, laying out the stink bomb as a harmless response to an illegal gathering. I handed out the city inspector's report, proving no health code violations. Then I dropped the bombshell. "There's another issue," I said, holding up the property records. "According to HOA bylaws, only homeowners can serve on the board. Linda is a renter, not a homeowner. She has no legal authority to be president or to issue fines." I placed the records on the table, along with the highlighted bylaw. The room erupted in whispers. Mrs. Henderson clapped, earning a glare from Linda. Linda shot to her feet. "This is outrageous," she snapped. "These are lies. I've been a dedicated leader for years." But her voice cracked, and I saw doubt in Gary's eyes. I pressed my advantage. "If Linda can provide proof of ownership, I'll retract my claim. But until then, every fine she's issued, including the $1,200 against me, is invalid." I sat down, my heart pounding. The room was chaos now, neighbors arguing, some demanding answers. Linda banged her gavel, shouting for order, but no one listened. Gary finally stood, clearing his throat. "We, need to verify this," he said, avoiding Linda's glare. "We'll adjourn and investigate. No votes tonight." Linda looked like she'd been slapped. My allies high-fived under the table as the meeting broke up. I'd landed a hit, but Linda wasn't done. As people filed out, she cornered me by the door. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "This isn't over." I smiled. "Bring it on." The fallout from the emergency meeting was immediate. By Tuesday morning, my inbox was flooded with messages from neighbors. Some were supportive. "Finally, someone stood up to her," wrote Sarah. Others were hostile. "You're tearing this neighborhood apart." One anonymous email read, clearly Linda's handiwork. The community forum exploded with threads about the meeting, half calling for Linda's resignation, half defending her leadership. I stayed out of it, letting the chaos brew. Linda's grip was slipping, but she was still dangerous, like a cornered animal with nothing to lose. Wednesday brought a new escalation. I came home from work to find a tow truck in my driveway, hooking up my car. I sprinted outside, waving my arms. "What the hell is this?" The driver, a burly guy with a bored expression, handed me a notice. "HOA ordered it. Says your car's parked illegally." I looked at the notice, another fake violation, claiming my car was obstructing the sidewalk. It was parked in my own driveway, same as always. I laughed, more out of disbelief than amusement. "This is my property," I told the driver. "You tow it, you're stealing." He shrugged, clearly not paid enough to care, and unhooked my car after a quick call to his boss. Linda was getting sloppy, but the stunt left a bad taste in my mouth. She wasn't just annoying, she was vindictive. I called Jen, who was livid. "This is harassment," she said. file a police report for attempted theft, and send the HOA a cease and desist letter. I'll draft it. By evening, I had a formal letter demanding Linda stop her baseless actions or face legal consequences. I emailed it to the board and dropped a hard copy in Linda's mailbox, making sure my security camera caught me doing it. If she wanted to play dirty, I'd play dirtier. Thursday, I got a tip from Tom. Linda's holding a strategy session at her place tonight, he said, leaning over my fence. Heard it from Gary, who's starting to crack. She's trying to rewrite the bylaws before the next meeting. I thanked him and spent the evening digging deeper into the HOA's records. Sure enough, Linda had submitted a proposal to clarify board eligibility, likely to loophole her renter status. The proposal was riddled with legalese, but Jen spotted the trick. It redefined resident to include long-term renters. If it passed, Linda could stay in power. I forwarded the proposal to my allies, urging them to show up at the next meeting to vote it down. Friday, Linda upped the ante. I woke to find my front yard covered in bright orange flyers, stapled to my trees and scattered across my lawn. Beware, uncooperative resident, they read, with a photo of my house and a rant about my disruptive behavior. My blood boiled, but I kept my cool, collecting every flyer and bagging them as evidence. I called the police non-emergency line, reporting vandalism. The officer who showed up was sympathetic but blunt. We can't prove it was her without a witness, but I'll file a report. It was something, at least. That afternoon, I decided to fight fire with fire. I printed 50 flyers of my own, titled, "Who's Really Running the HOA?" They outlined Linda's renter status, her fake fines, and her trespassing, with a call to action. Demand transparency at the next meeting. I didn't stoop to her level by littering. I handed them out door to door, chatting with neighbors and answering questions. Most were shocked. A few, like Ron, slammed their doors in my face. But the tide was turning. By evening, Linda's pink flyers on the bulletin board were gone, replaced by mine. I caught Mrs. Henderson winking as she pinned one up. Saturday, I got a call from Gary. His voice was shaky. "I'm stepping down from the board," he said. "Linda's out of control. I didn't sign up for this." I pressed him for details, and he spilled. Linda had been forging board signatures on violation notices, including his. He'd kept quiet out of fear she'd turn on him, but the meeting had changed his mind. "I'll testify if you need me," he said. It was a game changer. With Gary flipping, Linda's allies were crumbling. I thanked him and added his statement to my growing file. The final meeting was 3 days away, and I was ready to end this. The weekend before the final HOA meeting felt like the calm before a storm. I spent Saturday organizing my evidence into a binder: property records, bylaws, violation notices, Gary's statement, security footage, and Jen's cease and desist letter. It was a brick of proof, and I was itching to slam it on the table. Sunday, I rehearsed my speech with Sarah, who'd become my unofficial strategist. "Don't let her bait you," she warned. "She'll try to make it personal. Stick to the facts." I nodded, but my nerves were fraying. Linda had been quiet since the flyer incident. Too quiet. I didn't trust it. Monday morning, I woke to a new low. My backyard was trashed. Someone had dumped bags of rotting food, spoiled fruit, moldy bread, fish scraps, across my patio. The smell was gag-worthy, a cruel echo of my stink bomb prank. My security cameras caught a hooded figure at 3 a.m., but the footage was too grainy to ID them. I knew it was Linda's doing, though no one else had this kind of grudge. I called the police again, who took photos and filed another vandalism report. "This is escalating," the officer said. "Watch your back." I spent hours cleaning up, my anger simmering. Linda was crossing lines, and I was done playing nice. By afternoon, I had a new plan. I contacted Michael Thompson, Linda's landlord, using the number from the property records. He was a gruff guy, clearly annoyed to be dragged into this. I laid out everything: Linda's fake HOA presidency, her trespassing, the vandalism, the city complaints. "She's dragging your property into legal trouble," I said, emailing him the police reports and cease and desist letter. He didn't say much, but his tone shifted when I mentioned potential lawsuits. "I'll handle it," he grunted. I hung up, hoping I'd just lit a fuse under Linda's reign. Tuesday, the day before the meeting, Linda made her final play. A new email from the HOA board announced a revised agenda for the meeting, including a vote to reinstate leadership stability. It was a blatant attempt to keep her in power, likely tied to her bylaw loophole. The email also mentioned pending disciplinary action against disruptive residents, aka me. I forwarded it to Jen, who laughed. "She's desperate," she said. "This won't hold up if you've got the votes." I spent the evening calling my allies, confirming they'd show up. Sarah promised to bring her sister, a paralegal, for extra intimidation. Tom was bringing his cousin, who hates HOAs on principle. Mrs. Henderson was baking more cookies. We were ready. The morning of the meeting, I checked my mailbox and found a handwritten note from Linda. No signature, but her loopy cursive was unmistakable. "Back off, or you'll regret it," it read. I laughed, tucking it into my binder. If this was her last-ditch scare tactic, it was pathetic. I arrived at the community center an hour early, setting up a table with my flyers and extra copies of the property records. Neighbors trickled in, some grabbing flyers, others avoiding my gaze. Linda arrived last, flanked by Ron and the perm lady, her face a mask of forced confidence. She didn't look at me, but I could feel her rage from across the room. The meeting started with a whimper. Gary's absence left a hole in the board, and the remaining members, a quiet guy named Steve and a nervous woman named Karen, looked overwhelmed. Steve called the meeting to order, stumbling over the agenda. Linda stood up before he could finish. "I'd like to address the false accusations against me," she said, her voice trembling with rehearsed outrage. She launched into a sob story about her dedication to the neighborhood, claiming my slander was a personal attack. A few of her allies clapped, but most people just looked bored. I raised my hand, and Steve nodded, ignoring Linda's glare. I stood, holding my binder like a weapon. "Let's talk facts," I said, passing out the property records. "Linda's not a homeowner. She's a renter, which means she's been illegally acting as HOA president." I walked through the bylaws, the trespassing, the fake fines, and Gary's statement about forged signatures. I played a clip of the security footage on my laptop, showing Linda in my yard. The room was silent, except for Mrs. Henderson's humph of approval. I ended with the vandalism reports and the note from Linda, holding it up for everyone to see. "This isn't leadership," I said. "It's harassment." Linda exploded. "You're lying," she screamed, slamming her hand on the table. "This is a witch hunt." But her outburst backfired. Steve called for a vote on her removal, and the room turned against her. One by one, neighbors raised their hands: Sarah, Mr. Patel, Tom, Mrs. Henderson, even some of Linda's former allies. The final tally was 28-4. Linda was out. She sat there, stunned, as Steve announced a new election for the board. I leaned back, savoring the moment. The queen was dethroned. Linda's fall was glorious, but I knew better than to think she'd go quietly. As the meeting ended, she gathered her things and stormed out, her heels echoing in the silent room. Neighbors buzzed with excitement, some slapping me on the back, others shaking their heads in disbelief. "Never thought I'd see the day," Tom said, grinning. Sarah hugged me, whispering, "You did it." Mrs. Henderson pressed a cookie into my hand, her eyes twinkling. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Linda was already plotting her revenge. She wasn't the type to fade away, she'd try to claw her way back, and I needed to stay sharp. The next morning, I checked my security cameras, half expecting more vandalism. Nothing yet, but I wasn't taking chances. I installed a new lock on my gate and upgraded my cameras to motion-activated ones with night vision. Jen called to congratulate me, but she had a warning. People like Linda don't give up power easily. Watch for retaliation. She suggested sending a formal complaint to the HOA's parent organization, a regional group that oversaw local boards. I spent the day drafting it, detailing Linda's abuses and attaching every piece of evidence. If she tried to weasel back in, I'd have a paper trail to bury her. By Thursday, the neighborhood was a different place. People waved as I walked to my mailbox, and the community forum was full of posts about reforming the HOA. Someone even suggested a block party to celebrate new beginnings. I liked the idea but wasn't ready to host. My backyard still felt like a war zone. Then I got a call from Michael Thompson, Linda's landlord. "I'm evicting her," he said bluntly. "She's been lying about repairs, dodging rent, and now this HOA mess. I don't need the liability." I tried to hide my glee as he thanked me for the heads up. A "for rent" sign was in Linda's yard by Friday. Checkmate. Linda didn't take it well. Saturday, I saw her pacing her front yard, yelling into her phone. She spotted me and flipped me off, which I caught on my new camera. I waved, knowing it'd drive her nuts. Later, Tom texted me. "Linda's telling people she's suing the HOA for wrongful removal." Says you fabricated the renter thing. I laughed. Let her sue. She had no case, and Jen was ready to counter. Still, I emailed Michael the footage of her gesture, just to keep him in the loop. He replied with a single word. Unbelievable. Sunday, I decided to throw that block party after all. I invited everyone except Linda, setting up tables in my backyard with Sarah's help. We grilled burgers, played music, and served lemonade, yellow, not green, to avoid bad memories. Neighbors brought desserts and stories, swapping tales of Linda's tyranny. Mr. Patel admitted she'd fined him for unapproved birdhouses. Another guy said she'd measured his driveway with a tape measure to enforce some imaginary parking rule. The laughter was cathartic, like we were exorcising her ghost. As the sun set, Tom raised a glass to freedom. Everyone cheered, and I felt a weight lift. This was what a neighborhood should be. Monday, I got a final surprise. A moving truck pulled into Linda's driveway, and by noon, she was gone. No dramatic exit, no last-minute tantrum, just a quiet departure. I watched from my porch, sipping coffee, as the truck rumbled away. The for rent sign was already drawing interest, and the neighborhood felt lighter, like we'd all been holding our breath. The new HOA board, led by Steve, sent an email promising transparent leadership and repealing Linda's dumbest rules. They even refunded my fines with an apology for oversights. That night, I sat in my backyard, staring at the stars. The grill was cold, the chairs empty, but the space felt like mine again. Linda was gone, her reign a fading nightmare. I'd fought for my home and won, but more than that, I'd helped free the neighborhood. Somewhere out there, Linda was probably bullying a new HOA, but that wasn't my problem. Here, we were finally free. And damn, it felt good.